welcome everyone to day 3, our final day, which is, mixed feelings for us. We're sad that it's our final day, but we're happy to be here with you again. Thank you for joining us. We have quite a few great topics today, but before we start, let me introduce ourselves again. We are the Life Mastery Collective. This is day 3 of our 3-day Level Up challenge to elevate your life and optimize your life. Just a couple hours a day, so we don't have a lot of time with you, but we wanted to get you rolling on a few things. And then, as you'll hear a little later, we have some other events coming up where we can spend a little more time with you. Kurt's going to just maybe you want to roll through who we are again really briefly, and then we'll address a couple questions that were, I think, kind of outstanding from yesterday. And then we'll get rolling soon.
Sounds good. As I've mentioned before, we're the Life Mastery Collective. We're just a group of individuals that have had some diverse interests and backgrounds. And between us, we cover a lot of aspects of life. And basically, what we would like to do is we're here to help our knowledge and experience become your shortcut. So that instead of having to go out and it's like when the country first started, people came out to different areas and they cut down the trees and they cleared the land and they made trails and did all that stuff. We've done that for you. Now, basically, we have paved road for you to just kind of cruise on through to help you get from point A to point B as quickly as possible and as uneventfully as possible. They say experience is the best teacher, but they always leave out the most important part of that. Experience is the best teacher when it's the experience of others and you learn from it. If I watch someone else put their hand on a hot stove and burn themselves, I don't feel the need to do the same thing to experience that. I can learn from their experience. So learn from what we've experienced. Let us teach you maybe a little bit more simplified approach to life. And with that, I'm going to ask also that you would cut out the distractions. We're just going to take a minute, turn off any electronics. If you've got dogs, kids, spouses, whatever, you try to tell them that you're going to be unavailable for the next couple of hours, and just take a moment so that we can focus in completely on what we're talking about. And to do that, I've mentioned before that in baseball there's a term called clearing the mechanism. So what pitchers will do, it's what players will do, they'll just take a deep breath and just kind of clear the mechanism, like clearing the register on your calculator so that it's ready for new input. So if you want, just join with me. We're just going to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4, and breathe out for 4 seconds, and just let everything clear out. Okay, with that, I'm going to give it to Andrea because she has a couple questions she'd like to address.
Yeah, so we'll also maybe just take a minute or two and recap what we covered yesterday. Yesterday was about health and wellness and time management and prioritization. And there were some really great presentations. And I think the through line was, again, as with anything, mindset is key. And we talked about health and wellness. Heather and I presented, and we talked about, some of how mindset can affect, your level of health, or how someone thinks about their level of health, or how much they actually focus on their health. And then we offered a few kind of tips and tricks we thought would help you in the limited amount of time we have. We have other events coming up. We're going to be able to spend more time with you, and we can go in more depth into those as well as we can with the other subjects we're talking about in these 3 days. And then Sean and Kurt talked about time management and prioritization. Sean talked about it's known as the Eisenhower matrix. Basically, it's the 4 ways of prioritizing the things that are on your to-do list. And, luckily, one of those has to do with delegating or completely deleting some of those things off your to-do list. So that was a great exercise. And then Kurt talked a little more about time management and prioritization and some other tips and tricks. And one of the things I really enjoyed about that was he talked about habit grouping. No, what is it, Kurt? Habit
stacking. Habit stacking.
Stacking, thank you. Habit stacking. And I realized that I already do that. And it does help me tremendously. So in the morning, I brush my teeth. And then after I brush my teeth, I do something called oil pulling, which is another detox thing I do. And then after that, I make my detox tea. So I have a pretty strong routine in the morning, and I group all those habits together with the one about brushing my teeth, because it is something that I always do every morning. So those were a couple of highlights that I noticed. Is there anything you wanted to highlight about yesterday before I go into Q&A, Kurt?
Well, for me, I could highlight a lot of stuff, because it's I was talking about time management, but in the interest of time, I'm going to keep it brief. It's just a lot of it is, I think it was probably Einstein that summed it up best. Whenever you're doing things and you're trying to figure out what your priorities are, Einstein said, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And so with that, I would say, keep your focus on what's important, try and eliminate a lot of the fluff. And that's going to take you a lot farther, just by learning how to say no to the things that aren't going to get you anything. They basically don't pay the rent for the space they take in your mind.
That's a great quote. And I like, keep the main thing. The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. I think that's an easy thing to remember, and it's pretty straightforward. If anybody else had any sort of gold nuggets from yesterday or even day one, feel free to drop them in the chat. Right now, I am going to just address a couple questions that came up, or maybe even less questions, more so, I guess, like just things I wanted to add about to things that happened yesterday were questions. So one of the questions we got yesterday, we talked about detoxing, and we talked about how a sauna can be a great way to detox. If you have one, great. If you don't, just maybe something to do every once in a while. And someone asked about a hot tub. Does that do the same kind of detoxing? And my response was, unfortunately, no, because while you do sweat during a hot tub session, usually most hot tubs have chlorine, and chlorine can be absorbed through the skin, and that unfortunately is not great for our bodies. So while you may be detoxing in a hot tub, you're also unfortunately bringing some toxins back in. If it's a saline hot tub or some other form and not chlorine, that's different. And also when chlorine heats up, it can convert to something called chloramine, and that can also be toxic in terms of breathing that gas in. Not heavily toxic, like you're not going to pass out or anything, but it just does put more toxins into your body. But the thing I wanted to mention about a hot tub, a little tip and trick, if you do have a hot tub, you enjoy going in a hot tub. I don't have one, but I enjoy going into a hot tub, but I do come out itching sometimes, and that's the chlorine. That's my skin has soaked up the chlorine, right? So I learned a couple of tips about that quite a while ago, and I use it whenever I can. Now, if it's in your own hot tub, you may not want to do the first one. The first one is you can rub like some sort of lotion or coconut oil specifically on your skin before you get in. So what happens is if you put something else on your skin before you get into a chlorinated water, your skin will absorb that first, and then it will sort of be, it's like a sponge. It will be filled, and then it won't absorb as much of the chlorine. So you can do that by doing coconut oil or some sort of lotion. But the best way to do it really is to get into a shower first, or splash water on your body first. So to have your skin absorb regular water first, not chlorinated, heavily chlorinated water. So even if you're getting into a pool, you could do this, rinse off in the shower. A lot of places, if you go to public places, they ask you to rinse off anyway. That's for a different reason. But I think for this specific one, you would rinse off in a shower first so that your body soaks up less chlorinated water first, and then you get into the hot tub, and then your body won't soak up as much. It's already absorbed a majority of what it's going to absorb, so it'll absorb less of the chlorinated water. So those are a couple of tips and tricks that I learned quite a while back. So if you do still want to do a hot tub and you're concerned about the toxification of it, it's not huge, but if you do it daily, you may want to consider jumping into the shower first or splashing water on your body first before you get in, and that will help reduce what you do soak back in of the toxicity. So hopefully that helps a little bit. We had another question yesterday. I'm trying to see what it was. Well, I can't remember. So maybe we will leave the rest of it for the end of the day today in our Q&A. But we had a great detoxing session. It looks like, let's see, some people have answered, learned so much about detoxing. My body is my temple reminder. Thanks. Good. Okay, great. So on that note, I think I'm going to pass it back over to Kurt, and he's going to tell you about our first session today.
Basically, what we're going to talk about is, because we all have stresses in life, we all run into things, and there's a characteristic that helps us get through those things, and that's called resilience. And I'm going to hand it over to a couple great people to talk about resilience and managing the stress in your life. Today, it's going to be Faye. We talked about Faye down before. She was a teacher for 42 years. She's counseled for 25. After her husband died, she was trained as a specialist in grief recovery method. And she continues to work with people both in person and online. And so she'll be talking about that. The other is Sue Mercer-Corey. She takes a very creative approach to event planning and helping others pay it forward. She's got over 3 decades worth of experience working in different office environments. She's got great organizational skills and a creative mindset. And she puts that towards, as I mentioned, the event planning. And she helps with a particular focus on cancer-related causes. So she helps people with that. She's a passionate advocate in the fight against cancer since it's touched her life. You notice there's a recurring theme here. Every one of us has learned a lot, not through the good times in our life, but when we've reached had some kind of adversity, because we walked through that valley to get to the peak again. But you have to have that mindset to keep you going. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to Faye and Sue.
Before I start, I just wanted to tell my colleagues how much I appreciated these last 2 days. I was feeling pretty complacent. I was 77. I am 77, and I just got back from the doctors, and he said I was in great shape. And then after I heard the last 2 days, I thought, I think I could be in a lot better shape because I'm not doing a lot of the things I'm talking about. So I'm going to be re-listening to these, and I really appreciate the information you gave us. Now, with that being said, I'm going to be talking about boundaries. And when I thought of boundaries at first, I naturally thought of like fences around, say, a farm, or fences around the neighborhood. And then the more I got into it, the more that I was thinking about it, those are not the boundaries that we're talking about. We're talking about different types of boundaries. But before I do that, I want to tell you my experiences when I didn't have those boundaries and what brought me to the understanding that I needed to do something. I started out teaching when teaching was teaching. We had our kids for the whole day, the same kids. You really got to know them. You really got to, there were some times they might go out for art or music, but for the most part, when I first started, you taught that. And I had a parent call me one day and say, how's my child doing? And I said, I don't have a clue. I see them 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes when I dismiss them. I have no idea what they're doing. And I just thought, I'm getting out of this early. So I retired about a year earlier than I could because I just couldn't handle the way it was going. So the first year of teaching, I found myself having parents calling me every night for at least, 4 weeks. It was going, there was a new program and wanted to know about it. They'd show up at my door when I was trying to teach. And I thought, I can't handle this because after I'm done with them, then I have 2 hours of lesson prep or 2 hours of grading. And it just was a 24-hour job. And I thought, is it me? Is it them? What's going on? And same thing happened when I started to counsel, because I had people that more or less came in and said, fix me. And I was in that mindset, yeah, okay, I'll fix you, because I just had 1 or 2 experiences at that time. What brought me to the fact that I needed boundaries was I got so burned out in both of those when I first started that I knew I wasn't doing the job I should be doing that was my passion in teaching and counseling. And I thought, it's not them, it's me. I have to set some clear boundaries to do a better job. And those two things I could change. The next thing I want to talk to you about is my husband dying. And that brought me into a whole new set of boundaries. And it's going to go into my stress as well that I'm talking about in a little bit. To show you where my mindset was at the time, shortly after he died, first I have to show you a picture of him. And right after he died, I wrote this poem to kind of tell you where I was. I'm trying hard to stay busy, but no matter what I do, my thoughts keep returning to the sorrow of losing you. Nothing works to fill the emptiness deep in my soul. And although I feel your presence, still I'm not whole. No one will ever again love or understand me as well as you do. No longer can I find the peaceful refuge that I found in you. I am trying to go on with life, but it's not working well. Life without you is its own kind of hell. There are moments of joy followed by unfathomable pain upon realizing I will never be in your loving arms again. As I complete the projects we wanted to do, I'm mad at God that I'm doing them without you. I suppress emotions to make it through the day, and I take pills to keep the nightmares at bay. Everyone else is busy living their own life. We were so in tune as husband and wife. We worked all our lives for this time to share. What a cruel joke, it's arrived, but you're not there. So I'll keep trying to find some meaning in moving ahead. Although numbness is my main emotion, realizing you're not the only one dead. So that was a different kind of boundary. I wasn't me. I haven't been the same me since he died. And that brings us to what are boundaries? And I'm sorry you can't see that this well. I'm reading it to you. I'm going to go over it in darker things when we do it again. But it says, boundaries are expectations and needs that help you feel safe, comfortable in your relationships, helping you stay mentally and socially as well as emotionally healthy. And notice that it says you feel safe and comfortable. If not, there's something to look at there. Learning when to say yes and when to say no is essential in setting boundaries. And that's one of the reasons I had trouble doing that, because I was always said you were supposed to be not cause any waves. And I knew if I had to set some boundaries, people wouldn't like it. I'd lose some friends. And it was safer not to do anything. Signs that you need better boundaries are: one, you're neglecting your self-care. Over some of those times, I reached bum status. I got to the point of how long have I been in this dress, or how long has it been since I took a bath, or it had eaten. I got down to my lowest weight, about 125, and I started losing my hair. So I thought something has to be done. Feeling overwhelmed, there's just so much going on. And the new things you never had to face before, that you just don't do anything, because it feels like if you start, you just add more to your plate. Resentments. Sometimes that was resentments at the ones that I loved the most. Sometimes it was resentment at me. It didn't matter. I was resenting just about everybody. Avoiding calls and invites. That was really hard too, because when I talked about the parents and I talked about the counseling, and especially with Larry too, it was like people meant well and they wanted information if they were a parent, or they needed to know something if they were in counseling and they had reached a spot where they thought I could help them. But it was also taking calls in the middle of the night. And the one person I counseled started sending me daily gifts. And I thought, boy, we gotta draw the line here somewhere. And then people would call me after Larry died, and I went into isolation for 4 years. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I don't care how much I loved them. I wanted to be by myself, and I wanted to find these programs that might be out there that could help me. I was getting invitations. It's like, let's bring the poor widow in and see what we could do if we could help her. And that's what it felt like. I know their intentions were good, but it didn't feel that way. Burnout, boy, especially in counseling in the school setting, I was burned out really fast. And I thought, if this is going to be the rest of my career, I need to take a look at something else because I can't handle this. Frequent daydreaming. And I was thinking, gee, if I just won the lottery, I could do anything I wanted to. But then I remembered I had to buy a ticket if I thought I had any chance here. Complaining, there is no time left for yourself. And I found myself doing a lot of that. I'm doing so much for everybody else that when it comes time when I can do something for me, I'm so tired that all I can do is sleep. So there for a while, I wasn't sleeping at all. And then I was using sleeping as an escape. At one point, I had the best library that with teaching and counseling that anybody could ever have. One of my profs died and left me his whole set of books, and there were some that were first editions. And I was so upset after Larry. And you have to know a little bit about that background. It was an aneurysm. It happened immediately. He even called the ambulance himself. He was up with some eating and he knew something was off. By the time I got to the hospital, he seemed fine. They sent us over to a bigger hospital, and on the way over, they called and said, do you want to talk to your husband for one last time? I said, one last time? What do you mean? And then all of a sudden the phone went dead. We were cut off. My son called him back, and then there was a series of, well, he's responding to commands, so we're going to operate, but he'll never make it through the operation. He made it through the operation. There were ups and downs, up and down. And the day that he died, the doctor was standing beside the bed saying, you know, your husband's doing so well, we're going to move him out of intensive care. And he said, I thought this is a lot different conversation than I thought we'd be having. Just got that out of his mouth, and Larry coded. And it was just like you see on TV, there were people all around, and the doctor was doing compressions. And there had been so many ups and downs, and he made it, he didn't make it. That when he finally came in to tell me he had died, I couldn't absorb it, because he was supposed to have died 4 other times. The most important parts to setting healthy boundaries are clear communication. And oh man, is that, be as specific as you can. We've talked about this in other areas. And there for a while, I was getting mad at Larry because he couldn't read my mind. We had a child 9 years after we were married, and we were pretty well set in our ways. Larry had an alcoholic father and been a father to his 4 siblings. He wasn't sure he wanted a child, and my mother thought I was too much of a career person, that I shouldn't go there. So after Brett was born, he had colic and he had a fissure, and he wouldn't sleep for any more than 20 minutes at a time. So I just got to the point I didn't lay down, and I was so sleep deprived, but I never said anything because Larry wasn't sure he had wanted a child. When I finally got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and as much as I love Larry, I told him I felt like I had another child there. And he was a policeman at the time. I knew he needed his sleep, but I knew I couldn't go on like I was. So I communicated to him that things didn't change. The action was, it was just adding more, what do I want to say, more conflict, more for me to do. And as much as I loved him, if he wasn't going to help, then I was ready to call it quits. We always were good communicators, but when it came to that, we really sat down and talked, and we really communicated well. When you say a communication, let the person know what the consequences are if they don't do it. The common reactions from your friends and your family when you start being more clear in your communications and more assertive, that Sue's going to be talking about, Common reactions are pushback. What are you doing? You're so different. What's happening here? Limit testing. Yeah, you say that, but you don't mean it, so I'm going to test you. Ignoring, just like you hadn't said anything, which really ticked me off. Rationalization. Now you're just doing this because you're tired. If you get some sleep, you'll feel better about it. Defensiveness. Why are you saying this to me? I'm not the only one that's doing this to you. Ghosting can mean two things. It can mean that they blame you for it, for not saying something sooner, or it can mean that they just completely get out of your life, which at that point is probably what you want the most. There's also the silent treatment, which I've been known to use a few times, and thinking that if you act a certain way, that person ought to read your mind. They ought to know that you're not happy. Well, they don't have a crystal ball. Eventually, believe it or not, after all that, it does get to a step of acceptance. But at first, they're going to up the ante because they don't believe that what you're going to follow through on what you're saying. There are 6 types of boundaries: physical, sexual, intellectual, emotional, material, and time. Most of these are fear, and fear is not rooted in facts. It comes from negative thoughts and stories we tell about ourselves in our own head. We are, and boy, I still have to remind myself of this, we are helpers, helping people find their own answers. We're not fixers. Why your boundaries are not respected? You don't take yourself seriously. You think, yeah, that's what I want, but I don't know if I can handle it. We don't hold people accountable. You went over the boundary that I had just told you about, but you don't say anything. Apologize for setting boundaries. I'm really sorry I have to ask you this, but I am really tired. Yeah, like they can see that you're not real serious about it. Allow too much flexibility. There again, it goes back to sticking at your guns. And you speak in uncertain terms. Well, maybe just this once we can try it. Assume once is enough. Once is not enough. When you tell someone something, they are going to keep at you until they really know you're serious. And there's a thing in assertiveness they call flooding, and it just means saying the same answer over and over again until it finally sinks in. And believe it or not, the mind reading we talked about. Well, I acted upset. Couldn't you tell I was upset? No, don't assume that people can tell. There are 3 levels of boundaries. Porous, that's the weak and poorly expressed. The rigid ones, and that's walls to keep others out. Your fear of being vulnerable, and there's a history in the past where you were taken advantage of. So you feel like it's going to happen again. Healthy boundaries is when past does not show up in the present. And there's a Nidra, Nedra, and I'm not sure I'm saying your last name right. Tawab, it's Tawwab, that is on the net. And she has a lot of things, including a quiz that can tell you which of these 3 things you show up more in. And the last thing is setting boundaries is a gift to yourself and to others. Many times we just think it's a gift to us, but it's not. We're stopping the other people from, and we're not enabling them. And if they're doing it to you, they're probably doing it to other people. So if you can kind of get that different mindset that it's better for everybody concerned, it helps. And you really can't do a lot of these things unless you have an assertive mindset or assertive attitude or assertive behavior. And Sue's going to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you, Faye. Again, I am so pleased to be here with everybody today, and I'm just tickled pink that you guys have joined us for this Level Up challenge. My topic is on assertiveness, and when they talk or give the definition of assertiveness, It's primarily that you get to express your thoughts, your feelings, your opinions, and you allow that to happen with the others that you're talking to express their thoughts, their feelings, and opinions. And let me tell you that being assertive is a skill. It's something that you will learn. And the more you use it in your communications, you'll find out that it suits everybody. It's a win-win situation. And one of the things that I found out that I was using assertiveness when I didn't even know I was doing it. And like Kurt had mentioned, 28 years ago, I was diagnosed with leukemia and had to go through a bone marrow transplant. I was in the hospital for a month. And when I came out of it, I felt like I needed to do something more. I needed to give back to somebody. I needed to give back. I needed to pay it forward. How I was going to do it, I didn't know, but that need of me was there. And what I found out that was my why, as we have mentioned in day 1 and day 2. Well, a brochure came in the mail, and there it was. It was join the Leukemia Lymphoma Society and do a half marathon or a full marathon by walking or running. Well, since running is not a word in my vocabulary, I decided to do the walk. And hey, they were going to even provide me a coach. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I can do this. And then I saw the numbers that I had to raise. And it's like, okay, the chest got a little tighter. But yet, again, my why, my wanting to pay it forward, ended up letting me do what we call cold calls. And the cold calls is where you go in and you are prepared and the fear is still there, but you walk in there like I did to a grocery store. And I met with the manager and I handed him my information. And I basically told him that I would love for him to provide me a case of wine. We talked a little bit further and he said yes. And when I walked out of that store, I realized that my shoulders were a little bit back, my chin was a little high, and maybe my strut was a little bit more going out the door. But I realized it was assertiveness. And the more different events that I did along the years, it came out more. And what I would love to do right now is to do a demonstration that all of you can do to increase your assertiveness. So right now, I would love for all of you to stand up, and I'm going to change my iPad here so that you can see me on the full length. And what I would like for you to do is to put your legs about the width of your hips. And I'd like for you to put up your chin up high, smile, the shoulders back, chest out, and finally, the hands on the hips. And take a breath. And you can even close your eyes at this pose and maybe think of Superman or Wonder Woman or even Underdog. Underdog was a cartoon character that was just like the other two. They were out there to save the world. And you know what? There is even a Harvard study that says by doing this pose, it creates the happy hormones, the dopamine and the serotonin within each of us. And that is such a good thing to do. And again, you can do this in front of the mirror, before a meeting, but it just sets your mood forward and you become more assertive. So with that, keep that in mind and let's sit back down. So being assertive allows an individual to communicate to everybody. Just think in your work, with your friends, with your family. It promotes the good aspects of promoting efficient, effective, and respectful interaction. Again, effective, respectful interaction. You know, there are some behaviors out there that we should try to avoid, and they are the passive, aggressive and passive aggressive. But by being assertive, it allows each of us here today to express our thoughts, our feelings, and our opinions in a more confident and direct manner. So I mentioned those 3 behaviors that we don't want to see out there. And let me start with the first one. The first one was passive. Now, a passive individual, you guys can almost see it in your mind. It's an individual that is, their self-esteem is kind of low. They're not confident in how they say things, and they may even avoid conflict or confrontation. They may even let others create and decide their decisions, even though they don't want to do it, but they go with the flow. Whereas an aggressive person says basically, go to hell, it's my way or the highway. And they don't care about anybody. They just go forward, and they might be a little hostile in it. They're aggressive. And in the end, that doesn't work either. And then there is that third behavior, which is called passive aggressive. And I think that one is the most dangerous in any type of communications, because an individual is compliant, but under the surface, just under the water, they're angry, they're frustrated, and it's going to come out somehow, somewhere. And maybe in staff meetings, you might see that individual as one to sit back in their chair, they cross their arms, and they're even shaking their head maybe at times, and they don't even know it. But they might end up turning around and sabotaging the meeting, or the project, I should say, without even knowing it, or they do, and they write emails that are mean, aggressive. And so that one doesn't work either. So I'm saying all 3 of those behaviors do not work. But being assertive allows us to have the best communication with everybody. Again, it's a win-win situation. And I know that there are benefits out there for having assertiveness. And right now, what I would love for everybody to do is to put in the chat what you think are the benefits of being assertive. And I'm going to ask Andrea, because my eyesight, I won't be able to see the chat. So if Andrea, if you could mention some of those that might come across.
Yeah, you bet, Sue. Let's see. We've got respect.
Okay.
Looks like maybe win-win situation for everyone involved when you're being assertive. Respect again. Communication.
Good.
Or
Good.
I guess maybe, yeah, communication came up.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see what else. Positive interaction.
Mm-hmm.
More likely to get what you ask for.
Good.
That's a good one. Clear goals.
Yes.
Yeah. Or
yeah. And you know, some of the others that I have written down was self-confidence, self-esteem. It just creates that goodness in you. And one of the things that I've discovered was that by allowing that back and forth communication with another individual, it gives you listening skills. It increases your listening skills because you're going back and forth in a respective manner. And in that comes problem solving. Because you are listening to each other, you have an opportunity for everybody to maybe come up with a solution, because you are being assertive with your thoughts and your feelings, and you're allowing it to happen with other people. And one of the other greater ones was with what Faye said, was on boundaries. By being assertive, it allows you to say no, but in a more respectful way. And you're not allowing the other individuals, or you're not putting down the other person's feelings, but you need to express how you feel, and that assertiveness comes out. And so I had mentioned about the cancer when I was first starting, and it's been it's been 28 years, but at my 20-year anniversary, I wanted to do something more again. I wanted to pay it forward. How? I didn't know. But then the bells went off. Ding, 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 ding. It's like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. So I wrote the letter, sent it out to all my friends and families. And this time I basically said that if I raised $10,000, that I would shave off all my hair. A little scared, but the assertiveness, my why was there. And I think my friends and families really wanted to see me bald because I raised 12,000 something that year. And I had to go back to work that Monday. And we had a party that day, but again, work that Monday. And I remember being dressed up in cobalt blue, one of my favorite colors. I had these sparkling earrings in, but I had this little, name tag or, right there that said, I did it for the cause. I did it for the cause. And all day long, my shoulders were back, the smile was on, and I was there. And I put my assertiveness out there, and I enjoyed every day. The hair came back in a different color, but that's a whole nother story. So thank you, everybody, for so much. And I strongly suggest for you to practice the assertiveness pose because it will take you a long way. Thank you guys so much. And I don't know if it's Kurt or Andrea.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you so much. That was awesome. And by the way, that assertiveness pose, or I don't know, some people call it power pose, I'll tell you what, when I remember to do it, it makes a huge difference. So thank you for running us through that. I think I heard about it a few months back, maybe when we were talking at some point too, and remember using it once or twice in certain situations at that point, but then I forget about it, so thank you for the reminder. It does. I also just feel like it just makes me feel better in general, like more empowered, I think, overall. So that was a fun practice. Thank you. I also had a couple, wow, that was a powerful session, Faye and Sue. Thank you so much. I happened to look at my notes here. I wrote a couple of things down. I really liked what you said, Sue, about one of the benefits of assertiveness is back and forth communication in a respectful manner, which leads to better communication overall. And it's interesting because I think sometimes when, at least for me, when I think of assertiveness, I think that almost in a negative manner to some degree, like we're too assertive. But when you said that, I realized, yeah, that's actually really, really true. I remember there was a time when like my husband would ask me, hey, let's go out to dinner. Where do you want to go? And I'd be like, I don't care, wherever, I mean, this was, I have places I'd like to go, but I was a little more open, I'd like to go with the flow, as you were saying, as you mentioned. And it used to really kind of upset him because he used to get frustrated, and I never understood why. I'm like, I'm trying, I'm just going with the flow here. I'm trying to be, cooperative. But I think what was missing was that assertiveness, because in that there was no back and forth communication. I was sort of just leaving it up to him. And, that almost goes to that, the reading the mind thing. And I realized that he wanted my input, and by not being assertive and by not at least giving a few options, it was working against me. I thought I was trying to be nice. I thought I was being, going with the flow, but really it was not quite. And I think that what you said about that touched on that. So I really appreciate that sort of, at the time we figured it out to some degree, and I learned to be more responsive, but I think that explains more why that was frustrating to him, because there was no back and forth. And then Faye said something. She said, healthy boundaries means you feel safe and comfortable. If you have a healthy boundary, if you're using your boundaries properly, you feel safe and comfortable. I really like that. I think that's a good marker. So thank you, ladies, for that wonderful, wonderful presentation and tips and tricks. Our next session, we get to hear from Deb and Faye. Again, you've met both of them, Deb in day one and Faye just a few minutes ago. They're going to be talking about resilience and stress management. And I'm really looking forward to this part because I already do some stress management techniques, but I know I could use a lot more. And I think resilience is so huge. especially in this day and age. So Deb and Faye, thank you so much for the presentation you're about to give. And I think we're starting off with Faye.
Yes, if you're alive, you're going to have stress. So if you don't have stress, you're in big trouble. It's going to be at different levels, but just living, everyday living brings stress on. And Deb is going to help us see some ways we can be resilient. You have to be resilient in life. And also ways we can cope with that stress. So Deb, we can take it away. You need to unmute. There you go.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Faye. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. And I'm so happy to be with this group. It's such an honor to be a part of this team. You guys are all awesome. And I have learned so much these last couple of days, and I hope everyone else has too. So we're going to talk about, what I'm going to talk about is resilience and grit. And that goes along with stress management, and it goes along with mindset as well. So when you look at the meaning of the word resilience is actually the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties. Well, I don't know about quickly, and it depends on the difficulty. But resilience to me is being able to stand firm and have the right mindset. And we'll go over a couple of strategies later on that help me to be resilient. And grit means courage and resolve and strength of character. And to me, that means just really having to go deep down inside of my soul to grab as much power, courage, energy, strength, whatever was needed at that time to get me through. Because I've had a couple of things in my life that, well, more than a couple of things, but one thing that stands out the most, I think, was the very hardest for me was when my second husband passed away while I was 4 months pregnant with our second child, and he got killed by a drunk driver who ran a red light, and it killed my husband instantly. And the part about it that was, all of it was sad, but that morning we had breakfast and coffee and goodbye and I love you and I'll see you tonight after work, and you know, all those things that everyday life. And then I get a phone call about halfway through the day that my husband went out to lunch and never came back to work, never came home again. So that was, my life turned completely upside down. It was like, okay, where do I go from here? I'm having a baby. I have a 3-year-old. I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old, and I'm alone. And now what do I do? Because I had 2 older children from my first marriage, and I swore I wasn't ever going to get married again or have any more kids. So yeah. But you know, they're the love of my life. They're my world. And but I really struggled, and mindset comes in because I think for about a week I was just like going through the motions, and what do I do now? And his family, he was from Honduras, and his family came and picked up his body and took him back home. So we don't even have a burial site for him. We have to do our own thing for him. And my 2 younger children don't even know who their father is. And that's hard. And then my 2 older children are in a whole different place. You know, one's in college, the other one's deciding what to do with his life. And, you know, after a year, I have a baby and a 4-year-old and a 23-year-old, 24-year-old, a 21-year-old, and everybody's going in different directions, and I have to work, and it was like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? And you know, I just had to be resilient. I just had to have grit because I had to go on. I had no choice, and I wasn't looking to get married again. I was just like, I just have to get through every day. And what really helped me was meditating. And I'm not even sure how it came into my life. Just looking for help, praying a lot. I can't even explain that part of my life. It was just so difficult that things just were coming in and going out. But I remember meditation really, really helped, and learning to breathe. And if I meditated in the morning for even 15, 20 minutes, I could get a grip on my life. It was like, okay, I'm setting an intention for how the day is going to go. Because by the end of the day, it was like chaos. We couldn't even get dinner on time. And then there was homework, and then screaming baby that hasn't seen me all day. And my 4-year-old who's running around, trying to get anybody's attention. And I have a kid in college trying to study. And so my intent was like, okay, the madness has to stop, because sometimes I would just hand the baby to the oldest boy, the 4-year-old to the other boy, and say, I'm out of here. I can't handle it. I'm going to lose my shit. And sometimes I would. And so I'd come back and I'd be, okay, give me the baby. Come on, Adam, let's go to the room. You go to that room, study. I don't know what you're doing, but whatever it is, it better be quiet. So that was like, no, we're not doing that. No, we're not doing that. And meditation really helped that, because then I could set the intention. Okay. And I had a stressful job. I managed a doctor's office, a pediatric office. And that was chaos. And I was in charge of everything going on in that office. So sometimes I'd come home like, it's the end of the world and I have kids. Oh my God. So learning to set an intent and breathing and putting myself in a state of mind that, okay, today at work, everything is going to run smoothly. When I get home, dinner is going to be on time. And I learned to delegate. Okay, somebody's making dinner out of the 2 oldest, and we would take turns. And homework is going to go good. Lexi's not going to be out of her mind, my youngest child, who's the most demanding of all my children. And everything's just going to go smooth. And pretty soon, things started falling into place, and I started getting control of my life again. And then I was able to put in the intent for my children, like as they were getting older. This doesn't happen overnight. It's not okay, I'm going to meditate. My life's going to be wonderful. Oh no, it took practice. It took years. It took madness. It took screaming, fighting for my life, basically, because sometimes I was like, I just can't do this anymore. But being consistent, staying in that growth mindset, setting the intention, and pretty soon I could put my children. So as my 3rd boy started growing up and going to school, he had a lot of issues because he was angry about not having a father. I didn't find out about this till later, because he knew his dad, but he didn't. And so he didn't know how to act with that, how to be around other kids who talked about their fathers all the time. And so it really disrupted his school, and he was bullied and things like that. But if I set an intent that today he was going to have a smooth day, today he's going to get the support he needs, and eventually now he's 26 and he has the most wonderful support group, and people who understand him, and as they were growing up began to understand some of the things that he was going through, because as a child he was slam his head on the wall whenever he got frustrated, or pound his head just throw himself on the floor and pound his head on the floor. And I would be like, what is wrong with you? How do we fix this? And he'd say, I just can't help it, Mom. I just can't help it. And I was like, so pretty soon I started getting him with me, and come with me, babe, and we're going to breathe and it's okay. So the point to all this story is that life is stressful. Life is going to throw things your way when you least expect it. And no matter what, you have to have the mindset, a growth mindset. You have to be resilient, and you have to have grit, and just get deep down inside of yourself and pull that out and say, I'm going to make it another day. I am going to be better today than I was yesterday. I'm using everybody's quote here. And better tomorrow than I was today. And and another thing I'm going to say too is that I have been alone most of my life. Not alone in that I haven't really had a partner for very long. I divorced my first husband. My second husband passed away. I divorced my third husband. Looking for my fourth husband. Just kidding. And so I've been alone. And so I just want to say that with this group, this is the first time. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry. I'm sorry. This is the first time I've had support, and I'm actually moving ahead doing something for me rather than for everybody else. And you guys have helped me in so many ways. I can't even begin to pay it forward to you guys. Just know that I love each and every one of you, and you're in my heart. And I say that from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you, Deb. We love you too. It looks like you may have frozen. And maybe that was a divine intervention. We shall see. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much, Deb, for that. We hope we'll get Deb back here soon. In the meantime, thank you, Deb, very, very much. That was just great. And I appreciate the heart that you bring to everything you do. I think we all do. So, yep, looks like we lost Deb altogether. So, but it sounded like she was wrapping up. I think she had a breathing exercise for us. So maybe we'll have her do that at the end after Faye goes through her stress management techniques. Deb was going to do an exercise with us then anyway. So maybe we'll do Deb's particular breathing exercise later. So Faye, it looks like you are up. Faye is going to talk to us a little more. You know, Deb mentioned meditation and using intention and mindset. Faye is going to talk to us a little more about some other stress management techniques. Faye, it looks like you're fine.
Yeah, I hope we get back because I'd like to tell her how much she's given to us too.
I'm sure she'll be back at some point. I love your shirt.
And I did not have a name for this guy until Deb did her thing, and I'm going to call him LMS, losing my shit. And it says, I am fine. Everything is fine. And so many times we say that when someone asks us, when we really feel like this. And we may look really good on the outside, but a lot of times we're feeling like this on the end. So of course, I already told you about Larry, but there was one week when I graduated from high school where my mother and father told me they were getting a divorce, and I hadn't seen it coming at all. I realized my mother was leaning a little more on me, but I didn't know why. And then when I realized what was going on, it was just such a shock. And I've been in a 4-year relationship with I don't know if, at that age if you call him a man or a boy, but we were in a 4-year relationship, and it ended that same week, the same week that I found out about the divorce. And then on top of it, I had a mentor. No one in my family had ever gone to college, so I just thought it was planned out for me to go to on a secretarial track, and that's what I'd been doing. Well, this man was a principal at the school, and he called me in and he said, I want you to make me a promise. And I said, what's that? He said, one, that you'll go to college, and two, that you won't get married until you get out of college. And he really was, I got a chance to tell him before he died how much he meant to me, but he really was like my father. And I found out, because I had to change tracks in the middle of the stream, that I was going in on probation. And that was, all those things at once hit me within 2 or 3 days. I do think the dog died then too, but just to add to it. But anyway, no one had ever seen me like that, because I was usually carefree or strong. You know, I was the one that people kind of came to, even in school. And I had just reached my limit, and I could not stop crying. So my mother called the doctor. The doctor felt like it was emergency enough. He made a home visit. He gave me a shot that put me out for 2 days. And, you know, I think it was at that point I thought, I don't want to always rely. I mean, I knew that medication wasn't always going to be the answer. I had to come up with some kind of stress management. And this was a few weeks after. I was gone for a while on this week. But stress management, stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. Now, stress isn't always bad. We probably were all stressed a little bit before we did our presentations, and that could very well give us an edge. So there are times that it's not bad to be stressed. If you weren't stressed at all, you'd just be a lump. When stress is too great, though, it has the opposite effect. It depletes our resources, leaving us feeling out of control. And something new that I learned, there is a thing called hypostress. And I had never heard that term before. And that's the lack of stimulation. When you think about it, that is pretty stressful if you sit in the chair all day for how long? Like I did for a while after Larry died. There is a difference between stress and anxiety. Stress is more external, while anxiety is more internal. The normal part of our daily world is to experience pressure and challenges. But if overwhelming, the fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. But it was never meant to stay. We weren't meant to stay in that state for any length of time. But some people are in that state of arousal indefinitely, and then they have a lot of problems, mental, physical, and so forth. Work at home and work pressures and home pressures, and our immediate environment. I got off on reading this chapter about, and I had heard about it before, but our lighting, our noises that are around us, the aroma, music around you, these colors of the wall, all of these things, I suppose you could call it feng shui, I'm not sure. But these can all add to what we're already stressed out about. Our behaviors and our attitudes are things only we can change. And there has been a long time argument about nature or nurture, and it really has been solved. It's a little bit of each. Just like being in our head and being in our heart needs to be balanced. They say that's the longest trip you'll ever take, is from your head to your heart. The A's of stress management are avoid it. If you can avoid it altogether, there was one person that I knew every time I saw it wasn't going to be good. So if I saw him coming one way, I went the other. You can alter it, let's say you have an important phone call that you need to make, and next door there's people doing construction. If you could just go over to them and say, could you stop for just 10 minutes while I get this telephone call made, and then go at it. That would be altering that situation, and you would have power in it. Accept doesn't mean that you agree with it. It just means, like, one of the examples I gave was like, if your boyfriend suddenly gave you a text and you were over, you could call your best friend and talk it out and help come to some level of acceptance at that point. And then 4 is adapt. And I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Now that's different for all of us. All of these would be. There are several different things that they talked about that you can do. And I really like the ones that you can do and nobody knows you're doing. And you know how a hot towel, when you go to get a massage, sometimes they'll put a hot towel on your face. If you just take your hands and rub them together and then put them on your face, you get a similar feeling. And you can pretty well do that anywhere. Some of this, like twisting, or if you try to become a pretzel, if you do that at work, they're gonna be carrying you out because they're not gonna think you're with it here. And just yawning, and I never thought about that, but I do feel a little more relaxed every time I yawn. So, and once we see someone yawning, just like Jeff, it's a response that we all start yawning. I hope that's not a commentary on the presentation, Jeff. The stretching and the pretzel one I thought was interesting. It's almost to get into a fetal position and hold it for as long as you can and then let it go. And then the opposite of that is stretching as far as you can, and then doing that for a count of 5. Some of these, like I said, you can't do if you're in the subway. I wouldn't suggest trying to stretch or become a pretzel. So those are some of the things that I had for stress management. And I guess the last one is just, I'd like us to think of today as a clean slate. I'd like to think that each day we grow, whether we realize it or not, in some way or another. And even when you think you're on pause, you're not. There's small steps. And even by moving just like 1/4 of an inch, it changes a bunch of muscles in your body. And so there's a real body-mind connection. And I like to fake it till you make it. If you don't feel good about yourself, then switch it around. It's that mindset. Say the things you do like about yourself, because there's a lot more. One of the exercises I had to do in one of my classes was to ask 5 people that I knew that if they had to tell somebody that didn't know me, they had to introduce me more or less. And the one that I thought was going to be the most critical was the one that was the most positive. So I think we see ourselves so many times different than other people see us. I see Jeff, I see everybody on here having such strength that it gives me more strength to make changes I need to make. So I think that's a good place to stop. You're a clean slate, think what you want to change, and know that you're never alone. We're always here for each other. I don't know who put the video on, but it really hit home because Larry liked to every now and then pay for somebody behind us, you pay it forward. And I have had so many experiences with that video that they put up really brought me to tears, because people have cried because I paid for their groceries, or, you just never know what's going on. I happened to get 3 letters from 3 past students, and I mean, they had their own family telling me the difference I've made in their life, and they would refer to a certain thing that happened. I didn't remember what had happened. I remember the kids, but I didn't remember what had happened. And it reminded me that we're always being watched by someone. And we are probably someone's modeling ourselves after you. And I'm taking a piece of each of you with me. And it's made me a better person. So that's a good place to stop. And I think Deb.
Yeah, Deb, we're glad to have you back. Thank you.
I was looking for you.
Thank you so much, Faye. I feel like your hair probably represents what happened to Deb in those few minutes when she was gone.
I was like, I looked up, I opened my eyes, I looked up and I was like, where is it?
Well, I looked up and you were frozen. But you were frozen at like the perfect time. You just finished a sentence. It was amazing. So we missed your breathing meditation, but maybe if we have time later, you can do that one. But I know you wanted to lead us through a kind of a stress management technique right now. Are you good to go on that?
Right.
Deb,
And
could I interrupt you for just a second? Because you went
Sure.
off before you heard what we said.
Oh,
We may seem like your family, but you're now part of ours as well. We've learned from you as well.
oh, well, thanks you guys. I didn't mean to become so emotional. I was just into it. It was just, you know, speaking from the heart. And
Never apologize for being emotional. Those are your true feelings.
and I'm very, very emotional. That's just who I am. And so
And you helped me name this guy. He's LMS, losing my shit. Go, Deb. I'm sorry.
yeah.
thank you, Faye.
So yeah, well, we can go back to so now I'm totally discombobulated. Are we at the end? Are we at the end of my thing? Am I doing the self-soothing?
Why don't you do the self-soothing one for us? Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do that one.
Perfect.
So
Thank you.
So this is supposed to, and I know I'm a very emotional person and I'm a very huggy person. And so I have to, you know, I have to realize other people's boundaries. And I always ask first before I hug somebody, because not everybody is. And that really kind of surprises me, because we're all human and human touch is so important. So when they tell me that, no, that's okay. And I said, well, can we do our own little hug? And I'll show you how to hug yourself. And they're even kind of like, no. I go, okay, whatever. But I want to share that with you because it's supposed to invoke the feelings of, because we have muscle memory. And when we were a child, when we were being held by our parents in this type of a position, it's supposed to bring those emotions back for you. And I have a ton of pictures of where I'm being held by my grandma or my grandpa. And so when I do it for myself, it always takes me back to those good memories, because I had wonderful grandparents. And so anyway, so let's take a deep breath, and for 4, hold for 4. Let's let out for 8 though. And then we're going to cross our arms and touch our shoulders, and going clockwise for about 10 times. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And just breathe in, let that emotion wash over you. And now counterclockwise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I always give myself a hug, because there's not enough hugs in the world, and I'm hugging each and every one of you. Mwah. I love you guys. Thank you. Thank you. And now back to Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. That was great. I have to say, even just like, squeezing and feeling like where my two arms cross.
Right.
I don't know. There's just something about that felt really, really amazing.
It is so comforting, and you don't even think in those terms. And like I said, I have been alone for a long time without a partner. And so I sleep with all these pillows, but I like to be hugged. I'm very affectionate. My kids, everybody's like, oh my God, you guys are so close, but I'm always hugging them. I'm always, I need my Adam energy. I need Anthony energy, Lexi energy, Joey energy. And they're just like, okay, Mom, that's enough. But I can't get enough of it. And so I hug myself on a regular basis. It's just learning self-love, and that it's okay. It's okay to be emotional. It's okay to love yourself, because that's where it really all starts.
Absolutely. So. Thank you for that. I think, I'm a hugger too. I don't think I was when I was younger. It's interesting because I was a little more shy when I was younger. But I definitely am now. And I got to tell you, that was a great exercise. And I can relate because, we had that year and a half where nobody could touch anybody and nobody could see anybody. And that was crazy. And for me, I think that's one of the things I miss the most. I mean, fortunately, my kids were still around, and my husband and stuff, and, a few members of my family, but I just feel like every time I would meet somebody, even still today, I feel like I still have to ask, but I feel like physical touch is so important. And I mean, there's that study long ago, or there's probably many studies about how babies who, when they're first born, if they are not held, they start to fade. They literally start to lack of survival. They can die.
Pass away. Yeah.
Exactly. They can actually die. It is that lack of thriving. And so it's just, human touch is critical. So thank you for that exercise. So I guess the lesson in that is human touch is critical, but it can also be your own touch. Like, that's important. Yeah. And thank you so much. That was phenomenal. And Faye, I just wanted to go back to, I really liked the 4 A's that you gave us. That was really incredible. And I think important. There were some of those things I didn't really realize that are part of stress management. For example, altering the example you gave about just going outside and asking for, I mean, that even goes back to the assertiveness and the boundaries thing too. Obviously this all interrelates, and this is why we wanted this together, these two things together on the last days, because we really did feel as a group that they related so much. And that one just sort of hit home for me, if something is going on and it's stressing me out, I can be assertive and set my boundary and ask for what I need and alter that. And that will then, of course, reduce stress as that is granted. So thank you so much, both of you ladies. That was very powerful and extremely wonderful. I was going to mention one other thing. I'm looking at my notes. In the beginning, Deb, you talked about setting an intention for yourself, but also for your children and the people you love. And that I really loved as well. I think sometimes, I try to work on intention, and that was just a great reminder. But I like the idea of setting an intention for the people who you're also responsible for, namely your children, or even a spouse or a best friend or something. A friend calls you and they're, having trouble or whatever the case may be, to set that intention for them, and maybe also with them, like the example you gave with your children. So thank you, ladies. That was phenomenal. Just fantastic, really. This day has been fantastic. I think it's been a great way to end our 2 days together. And now we wanted to talk for a few minutes. I think Kurt and I wanted to discuss with you briefly. We have, we've had these 3 days together, and it's been fantastic. And it's also been a really short amount of time. And for those of us speaking, we were happy to offer the information we had, and we have so much more. And so as a result, we also have other activities planned, other events planned going forward. And one of them, we do plan to do this challenge again soon. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'll have another challenge. And, you know, keep an eye out on our Facebook page for that. That is, again, facebook.com/Life Mastery Collective, all one word. And then we have a couple other things we're going to talk about. Kurt, do you want to give a little information about the live event we have coming up soon?
Well, live event, basically, you know, and again, today it was awesome. You know, through talking about assertiveness, stress management, and stuff, the ladies were able to help empower you a little bit more in how you communicate with others, so that, you know, because some of those walls work both ways. You can wall people off to keep them out so that they're not in your face, but you can also wall them off to keep them out because you're withdrawing from the world. So there's a fine balance there that you have to watch. And Faye talks about some of the reasons we do the things we do. And again, if you know why you do certain things, again, it always gets back to mindset and why, go figure. But if you know why you do certain things, you can help to overcome them and come out of your shell. You know, like anything else, communicating with people is a skill, and any skill can be learned. You just have to apply yourself. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people think that they're going to flip a switch and life's going to be magical, you know, from day one. It doesn't work that way. Just like learning how to walk, you had to fall on your butt, in your face, and whatever parts of your anatomy many times. Excuse me. You had to get up and keep going and keep repeating. You know, repetition is the mother of learning. So because of that, there was a lot of information that we talked about here, and you would be a miracle if you could take it all in one sitting and say, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. I'll remember that and go and apply it. And that's why we're going to do this challenge again. We're going to do a live event. We're looking at like a 3 full days, be a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, where we can go and actually go a little more in depth in some of these topics and actually include some other things. You know, some of us like have a background in leadership and other things that we didn't really touch on here because there really wasn't enough time, to be honest with you, to try and cram all the stuff that all these people know in a couple hours a day for a few days. It's not going to happen. You know, we've got, between all of us, you know, we've got hundreds of years of experience in life. Now, I think there's probably 2 or 3 of us that are carrying the heavy end of that, but you know, there's a lot that's available, and we would, you know, our goal is to be able to provide value for you, you know, in whatever it is that you need. You know, we want to be able to supply that, because there's a lot of stuff that, you know, I've mentioned before, I come from a military background, and I like the way the military teaches. They do all the stuff you need, but they don't put in all the fluff. You know, they're not worried about you becoming a well-rounded individual. Okay, they're concerned about you becoming effective. So I kind of, you know, when I want to learn something, I kind of go with all of the stuff and none of the fluff mindset. I want to get the information I can get so I can apply it. I don't need you to tell me about the history of how they discovered this methodology and everything else. And, you know, I don't need to have a PE class or a basket weaving class so that I can incorporate it into my holistic being. I just want to know how the stuff works. And that's the way I work. Okay. And I think you'll find that when you can learn what you need, it gives you more time to round yourself out, to live that life and to become a more balanced individual. But unfortunately, sometimes we're spending so much time and effort in one area just trying to figure out, you know, figure out this one nut of it all, that we kind of miss everything else. You know, we're missing the forest for the trees, so to speak. And so if we can help you do that, fine tune it, and get the information you want, you know, and not have to spend years getting it, that's our goal. Now, what I do want to say is, if you're here right now watching this, you've already separated yourself from the crowd, because realistically, most people never look for more. The majority of college graduates have said, they've done surveys in the past, and they said, I'm so glad I'm out of school. I never have to read a book again. That is such a sad commentary on life that, well, I've done all the reading I ever need to do, and short of, newspapers, magazines, or comic books or whatever, or, watching TikTok videos or picking stuff up off your social media, I don't ever have to read anything of substance again. If that's the life you want to live, that's fine. Just like water, it seeks the lowest level, and you move with the currents. But I don't think that's anybody that's listening to this, because if you're here, you're a seeker, you're a lifelong learner, and you're to be commended about that. So we're here to serve you and to help you with that, and continue. Like, so we're going to be doing probably mid to late August, is what we're looking at right now, a 3-day full day event. So we're talking 6 to 8 hours a day.
Right.
That way it gives us a little bit more time to delve into it, and that way you can set aside a time so you can focus on it. And there'll be some offers that we'll have. Stay tuned to our Facebook page, as Andrea has mentioned. And whether you choose to continue with us on this journey and to learn more from us, or you just want to just follow our Facebook page and see what we post up there, that's great. Whatever works for you, that's what we're here for. We're looking at the best thing for you. But it does remind me about a lot of things in my life, because I've had some interesting opportunities. I had a good friend that went to work for a small company out here in Redmond. It was it was microcomputer software company. And at the time he told me, if you can, go see if you can buy you $1,000 of stock in this company, because it's going to be big. This is back in the mid 80s, late 80s. And, I was just out of the military. I was homeless for a little while. I was living in my truck by Green River out here. At the same time, Green River Killer was going around doing his thing. So, and scary note, I actually knew him. So we have weird connections as things go. But I was just hoping to eat another meal. So I really wasn't into buying stock, but as you have probably figured out, that company was Microsoft. And if I'd had $1,000 of original stock, I would be in a different position today. So my point is, there are a lot of opportunities in life, and you may think, oh, I'll see that again. Scary enough, have a few of those. But don't look away, and don't turn down something just because you think, well, I can get to that later. It's when I take my wife shopping, and yes, I go shopping with her because it's a chance to spend time with her, and I don't mind. We'll go do something. She'll look at something, whether it's shoes or dress or whatever. It doesn't really matter to me, but I can always, so she'll think about it. So I have to think about it. And I'll say, do you like it? She says, yes. Does it fit? Yes. Then buy it. But I don't know, buy it, because the worst thing can happen. You get home, and you decide, yeah, it's not really me. I'm just, it's not doing it for me. You can take it back, because when she does it, it could be a pot for the plants. She loves the garden and stuff too. But inevitably, she'll see something. She'll get home and says, I should have got that. We're going through buyer's remorse over a barbecue we didn't get recently because it had a pizza oven. So yeah. So when you get home, inevitably you say, I should have got that. And then you go back and it's gone. There are no more. That was the last one, or there were only a couple and they're all gone. And now she spends a week going, man, I wish I'd got that when I was in there. So I've learned, when there's an opportunity, the stars line up, everything comes together, and there's something that's like, oh, that looks really cool. Man, that's awesome. Just buy it. If we can afford it, just buy it. Because if it doesn't work out, you can take it back. But if it was going to work out and you didn't do it, you can never get that back again. How foolish were you A good mentor of mine we were talking about a business opportunity years ago that we actually got involved in. And, he said, if 10% of what I tell you is true and you don't take advantage of it, how foolish are you? There's a lot of information, a lot of experience here. If 10% of what we bring to the table can help you out, how foolish are you not to take advantage of it? Is it anything you want to add, Andrea?
Yeah, thank you, Kurt. I think that was very powerful, and it's something I try to remember in my life as well. I'll tell you what, Costco does that to me all the time. They have great things. I mentioned yesterday that I'm, gluten-free, dairy-free, all that. And they have great stuff. Every once in a while, they'll come out with something that's, and Costco's much better price than anywhere else. And yeah, if I don't buy it, then it's gone a week or two later sometimes. So sometimes I'll grab a few and I'll tell my friends, or, like my mom or somebody I know who eats in a healthier manner. So that's a really good, I think, story and a good, mindset, back to mindset to have, is to risk forward. I think is almost even the concept that comes to my mind is, take that leap and dive in and see how you like it. You can always jump back out. And yeah, did anyone else say, did you want to comment? Did you want to say something?
I think it really does go back to looking at the why, because there are times when I'm really depressed that I'll go shopping for one thing and come back with a whole cart of something I don't need. And it's trying to fill a gap that's not there. And I think, well, I deserve it. Yeah, but I haven't used it I never use it. But I think it still goes back to that why and being aware.
The mindset and the reasoning. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So, right. Exactly. So I'm gonna, in a second here, we'll address, there were a couple more questions, I think, and then we will see if any of my other cohorts here, my teammates, want to say any last words of wisdom or just comment at all. But I think what I wanted to express, the same thing that Kurt did, is that we are here to help, and we are excited to have you here. We're grateful that you were with us, and we look forward to having you with us more. We have so much to offer, and this was just a taste, like back to Costco. This was just a sample of what we have in our Life Mastery Collective team and what we each have to bring. So we're excited, going forward, to have more samples, as well as, offering actual, big pieces to bite off and chew on, and work on and work through with you. And we're grateful that you're here, and we're looking forward to more time with you later, and more time for us to share more that we have to offer. And there is a lot out there for us to offer. So anyone else want to say any last words? If not, we'll run into Q&A.
I'd like to thank Cindy for sticking with us.
Yes, thank you.
Actually, I was going to say, just to wrap up real quick, just some of the things that we've covered. So you realize that these 3 days, you did get some information. We went over how to discover your big why.
Mm-hmm.
We learned how to set smarty pants goals.
Mm-hmm.
We discussed ways to basically improve your health, or at the very least to decrease the rapid path to destruction that you're on. We learned a little bit of time management, prioritization strategies, just to kind of, put things in a different perspective for you. Today, we've covered resilience and grit a little bit. That's always a good thing to have. The stress management techniques and some breathing exercises. So if you think about it, there's been a lot of information here in 3 days. So
in 6 hours.
yeah, there's been a lot of information. I hope it's been beneficial a couple hours each day for you, because there's stuff there if you want to take it and apply it. So that's kind of my 2 cents, and wrap up. The other thing is, if you've got a lot out of this and you feel a little bit of a hype, and then a couple days from now, all of a sudden you're your daubers down, as we used to say. Understand that when you get excited or hyped up about anything, you get an endorphin release. And your body can keep that up for a few days, but typically you can't keep it up forever, and there is a natural crash. It's just like after you get a hit of adrenaline. I've had a few incidents in my life where I've had adrenaline, and afterwards, when all the stress of the situation or the event is down, I get the shakes because I've used up all the energy, all the light glucagon in my muscles, and I'm all twitchy and shaky and jello. So that's going to happen. Your brain is naturally going to try to shut down a little bit because you can't keep that going forever. So if you go into you become an integral part of your navel for a day or so, that's natural and to be totally expected. So just realize it, roll with it, and know that it will be better. Just your body's way of resting and regrouping and recuperating a little bit. So
yeah, and stick with us. We'll help you stay in that growth mindset. We'll help you keep in that forward movement. But yeah, as Kurt said, sometimes there is, and we talked about this before too, sometimes there's even that position where, you're all excited, you're back in this growth mentality mindset, and then, life hits again and you start falling back into that fixed mindset. We'd be honored to have you stick with us, whether it's, through our Facebook page or in our other challenge or through our live event that's coming up soon. And at some point we even have a 12-week life optimization program that we're going to start. That will probably be a little more towards the end of the summer, early fall. But, we're happy to have you stick with us to kind of help keep you in that growth mindset. We do it for each other, and we're happy to do it for you as well. Deb, did you want to say something? I didn't know if I saw.
I do actually. Before I became all emotional, when I was telling you guys about how I've been alone with my children, but I've never really had a partner for a real long time. And going it alone was, I never really accomplished a lot. I mean, 6-7 years, I accomplished more in this last year with you guys as a support than 6 or 7 years of trying to do it by myself. And so I really learned, because I always thought, well, I just have to do it. I just have to do it. And I'm kind of a loner anyway, and kind of away from my family. And I really don't think in the same terms as my family. And I live in a state where I don't have any family other than 2 of my children. So you guys have, and something that I want the audience to know is that how important a support system is. And I didn't realize that until I saw my own growth. I did things that I have never thought of doing, for one, didn't know that they were possible. And then I accomplished them. And with the help of you guys, they flourish. Now I can, the foundation I was talking about, I'm past that now. My feet are firmly planted and I know where I'm going. And you guys help with my weaknesses to be stronger. You guys take the time to teach me, to have patience with me, have understanding. And that is what we are all about. That's what this team is all about. And that's what I wanted to express to our audience. So thanks again,
Thank
you guys.
you. Thank you, Deb. I feel like we should just end on that note, for crying out loud. That was amazing.
thank you.
And very true to point. And I would agree with you 100%, for sure, for sure. So I think let's end on that note. I think we covered a lot today, and it's been fantastic. And we will have our recordings up at some point on our Facebook page if you want to go through this, but we will also have another live challenge. And I just like to mention that live is always better in many ways, because it makes you actually show up. And kind of to Deb's point, when you're actually have shown up and you're there with people live, you get more done, really, realistically, versus trying to watch a video, squeeze it in between things, and it's too easy to shut it off. It's too easy to come back to it later, and then you don't ever come back to it later. That's been my experience a few times. So while we will have recordings of this, we also do want to encourage live participation and coming to our live events, because that is really where the transformation, the growth, the optimization happens, because you are there and you are doing it. And in our live event, as Kurt mentioned, coming up in a few weeks here, it's 3 full days, and we'll actually be walking through a lot of these exercises in more depth, in more detail, and a lot of these tools in more depth and more detail, and have other topics we'll be talking about. And so even more growth potential, even more optimization available to you. So on that, thank you so much, everyone. We appreciate you being here. And thank you to all my teammates. I am very grateful for who you are and what you bring to our team, but also to this world. And we will stay tuned to our Facebook page. We will be doing more soon. In the next couple of weeks, we've got quite a few things coming up, and there'll be some more content on our page as well. And we're happy to have you with us now and going forward. So thank you for joining us for the last 3 days, and we will see you more soon. Thank you, everyone.